Have you ever heard of a shareholders agreement or an SHA? If you're in business, it might just be the single most important document you don't even have. The best way to think about it is like a prenup for your company. It's a blueprint you create when everyone is friends and on the same page to help you navigate the tough times that are, let's be honest, probably going to come up later. Okay, let's get into it.
So, picture this. You've got two founders. Maybe they're best friends, and they're starting a company. They are so excited, they trust each other completely, and they have this amazing shared vision. They've got the great idea, and they are absolutely ready to take on the world. At this stage, a super formal agreement just feels like overkill, doesn't it? I mean, you trust each other. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, as many people have learned the hard way, the reality of actually running a business is a little more complicated. Handshake deals and just relying on trust? That stuff can shatter when you're facing real-world pressure. I mean, disagreements over money or strategy or even who to hire, they aren't just possible, they are absolutely inevitable. And trying to figure it out in the middle of a crisis, that's usually what sinks the whole ship.
And this is exactly where the shareholders agreement comes in. Look, it's not about a lack of trust. It's actually about creating a really clear, agreed-upon framework that protects the business, the investment, and frankly, the relationship itself. It's basically the company's constitution.
So what is it exactly? Well, at its core, an SHA is a private contract just between the owners of a company. Think of it as the official rule book that everyone agrees to play by. This is the thing that moves you past a simple handshake and into a real, legally binding partnership. It's all about getting everyone on the same page about the really big stuff.
And this quote, it really gets to the heart of it. The whole point of an SHA isn't just to list a bunch of rules. It's about creating a predictable, stable way for the company to operate and make decisions. And that lets everyone focus on what really matters, growing the business.
Now, here's a super crucial point. An SHA is a private contract, so it's binding on the people who sign it. But, and this is a big but, for it to have real teeth and be binding on the company itself, its key parts have to be written into the company's official governing documents, like the Articles of Association. This step is what makes the private agreement part of the public, official framework of the company. It's what gives it real legal muscle.
So what actually goes into this blueprint? Let's take a look at the core components of an SHA and see how these different clauses really build the foundation for a stable partnership.
Okay, first up is governance. The balance of power. The SMHA clearly defines who gets to put directors on the board. It confirms how voting works, which is usually tied to how many shares you own. And it sets rules for meetings, like the quorum, which is just the minimum number of directors who have to show up for any decision to be valid.
And this brings us to one of the most powerful tools in an SHA, reserved matters, sometimes called veto rights. This is a huge point of negotiation, especially when investors come into the picture. They want to make sure that major, company-altering decisions, like selling the business or taking on a ton of debt, can't happen without their specific okay. This protects their investment and stops minority shareholders from getting steamrolled by a majority owner.
But beyond just making decisions, an SHA protects the company's value. You've got confidentiality clauses to stop sensitive info from leaking out. Preemptive rights give current owners the first chance to buy new shares, so their ownership doesn't get unfairly diluted. And then you have transfer restrictions or lock-in periods. These are so important for investors because they make sure the key founders are committed and can't just sell their shares and walk away during those critical early years. Every investment is made with one eye on the future. A good SHA doesn't just cross its fingers and hope for a good outcome. It actually maps out exactly how everyone can eventually get a return on all their hard work and money. So the agreement lays out all the potential ways to exit. The big dream is often an IPO, but a strategic sale to a bigger company is way more common. Other options could be the company or founders buying back an investor's shares. But one of the most important exit mechanisms is this really powerful clause called the drag-along right. So what in the world is a drag-along right? Well, imagine a buyer wants to purchase 100% of your company, but one single minority shareholder refuses to sell. That could kill the entire deal. The drag-along right prevents this. It basically allows the majority to drag the minority into the sale on the exact same terms. It's a super powerful tool to make sure a clean, complete exit can actually happen.
But what happens when things go wrong? When partners just fundamentally disagree? A well-drafted SHA provides a pre-agreed safety net to help you resolve conflicts without totally destroying the company.
Okay, first, it is so important to understand the difference between a dispute and a deadlock.
A dispute is when somebody breaks a rule in the agreement. That's a breach of contract. That's usually handled legally, probably through arbitration. A deadlock, on the other hand, is a business disagreement. You just can't agree on which way to go. It's not about broken rules, it's about being stuck at a strategic impasse.
To solve a deadlock, the SHA creates this tiered process. It always starts with a simple discussion. If that doesn't work, it escalates up to senior leaders. If there's still no agreement, it might trigger a buy-sell provision, where one partner is forced to either buy out the other or be bought out themselves. And then, as an absolute last resort, it gives you an orderly process to just wind up the company.
So we've seen what an SSA does and why it's so important. But how does it go from being just a document to being a daily reality for the business? Let's walk through its life cycle.
The whole journey begins with negotiation. That's where everyone, founders, investors, their lawyers, hammers out every single clause. Once it's all agreed, it's signed. Then comes that really crucial entrenchment step we talked about, where the key terms get written into the company's official rulebook. And from that day on, the SHA acts as a living guide for the business until it's either updated or terminated, which usually happens after a successful exit. And this visual just perfectly illustrates that transformation. The signature takes all those conversations, all that trust, and all those expectations, and it turns them from a simple handshake into an enforceable, legally binding partnership. This is the moment the blueprint becomes the actual foundation. Ultimately, it all comes down to this. The hard work you put in up front, negotiating a balanced, thoughtful agreement, is what's going to save you from really destructive conflicts down the road. A strong SHA truly is the bedrock of a healthy, long-term business partnership. So it really just leaves us with a final thought. Whether you're a founder, an investor, or even just thinking about starting a company, you should ask yourself, is your partnership based on a handshake, or is it built on a foundation that's strong enough to handle the pressures of growth and change? Because having a well-crafted shareholders agreement can make all the difference in the world.